Welcome back to True Crime Documentary YouTube channel. The city of Los Angeles, California is no stranger to dark tales of crime and betrayal, but nothing could have prepared its residents for the shocking events that unfolded on March 15, 1996. What began as a seemingly ordinary day for Oren Walker, a dedicated husband and father of two, ended in unspeakable tragedy. Oren, an honest and hard-working man, was brutally murdered by none other than his own wife, Marigold Fairfax, and her lover, Caspian Whitaker. The motive? A sordid affair between Marigold and Caspian, coupled with an insatiable hunger for wealth and freedom. This act of cold-blooded murder was followed by an even more chilling crime. Marigold and Caspian, in their desperate bid to cover up their actions, took the lives of Oren and Marigold's innocent children. The story of their downfall shook the entire city to its core, leaving behind a trail of grief, horror, and unanswered questions. Oren Walker's life was the embodiment of resilience, determination, and family values. Born in 1966 to a modest family in Los Angeles, Oren was raised to understand the importance of hard work and integrity. From an early age, he demonstrated a strong sense of responsibility, both in his academics and in his relationships. He was never one to seek attention or bask in glory. Instead, he focused on quietly building a solid foundation for his future. By the time Oren reached adulthood, his dedication to his studies paid off when he earned a degree in engineering. His talent and work ethic soon propelled him into a successful career leagues, and superiors alike praised him for his attention to detail, his problem-solving skills, and his unwavering dedication to every project he took on. Oren's life may not have been filled with fame or extravagance, but it was one of stability and quiet accomplishment, something he took pride in. While many people chase material wealth or societal status, Oren had only one goal: to create a comfortable and loving life for his family. He married young, falling in love with Marigold Fairfax, and together they built a life centered around family values. Their children were the light of Oren's life. He worked tirelessly to ensure they would have opportunities he never had. Oren's selflessness was evident in every aspect of his life. He gave without asking for anything in return, and his family's well-being was always his top priority. He wanted his children to grow up in a home full of love, security, and trust. Little did he know, the woman he had devoted himself to would soon betray all of those values in the most unimaginable way. Marigold Fairfax was the very picture of grace and beauty. Born in 1968 in Los Angeles, she was raised in a comfortable middle-class home. From a young age, Marigold possessed an undeniable charm. People were drawn to her. She had the kind of presence that could light up a room, a magnetic personality that made people want to be near her. With her radiant looks and lively spirit, she found it easy to win people over, and throughout her youth, she enjoyed the attention of admirers. In 1990, Marigold's path crossed with Oren Walker at a local social event. Oren was not the kind of man who typically caught the eye of someone like Marigold. He was quiet, dependable, and didn't exude the flashy confidence of some of the other men Marigold had known. But it was precisely this stability and groundedness that attracted her to him. At the time, Marigold was looking for something real, something solid, and Oren seemed to offer just that. The two quickly fell in love, and by 1991, they were married. For a while, their marriage seemed perfect. Marigold settled into her role as a wife and mother with ease. The couple welcomed two children into their lives, a son and a daughter, and from the outside, everything appeared idyllic. Marigold was seen by friends and neighbors as a doting mother, always attentive to her children's needs, and a supportive wife who stood by her husband's side. But behind closed doors, Marigold's heart began to change. What had once been a life of contentment now felt stifling. She began to feel trapped in the mundane routines of family life. Oren's steady, predictable nature, which had once been a source of comfort, now seemed dull and uninspiring to her. As 1996 approached, Marigold's discontent grew. Her marriage, once filled with love and warmth, now seemed like a prison. The quiet nights at home, the same faces, the same routines, it all became suffocating. She longed for excitement, for adventure, for something or someone who could reignite the spark that had long since faded from her life. It was during this period of growing frustration that Marigold met Caspian Whitaker. Caspian was everything Oren was not. He was bold, charismatic, and possessed a magnetic charm that captivated Marigold from the moment they met at a high-end social event. Caspian came from money, old money. He had been born into wealth and lived a life of luxury that Marigold had only ever dreamed of. His confidence, his charm, his lavish lifestyle, it was intoxicating to her. What began as harmless flirtation quickly escalated into a full-blown affair. Caspian offered Marigold the escape she had been craving. With him, she could be free from the constraints of her life with Oren. Caspian whispered promises of a new life, a life where she would never have to worry about money, where they could travel the world together and live in luxury. Marigold, blinded by her desire for excitement and her growing dissatisfaction with her life, fell deeper and deeper into Caspian's web. As their affair grew more intense, so did Caspian's influence over Marigold. He knew she was unhappy in her marriage, and he used that to manipulate her. Caspian began planting the seeds of a plan that would remove Oren from the picture entirely. At first, Marigold was hesitant. She had never thought of herself as a violent person, but Caspian was persuasive. He convinced her that if they got rid of Oren, they could be together, free from the constraints of her old life. Not only that, but they could take Oren's money and live the life of luxury they both desired. Slowly, Marigold's resistance crumbled. She began to see Oren not as her husband, but as an obstacle in the way of her happiness. With Caspian's coaxing, she started to believe that the only way she could ever be truly free was if Oren were no longer in the picture. And so, the two of them hatched a plan to murder him. The fateful night arrived on March 15, 1996. Oren had no idea what was coming. As he lay asleep in bed, exhausted from a long day at work, Marigold quietly retrieved a knife from the kitchen. Her hands trembled as she approached the bed, but her mind was made up. In her heart, she believed that this was the only way to secure her future with Caspian. In the dead of night, Marigold struck. She plunged the knife into Oren's body again and again. He woke in a panic, but by then it was too late. Oren, the man who had devoted his life to his family, was gone in a matter of minutes. Blood soaked the bed and the floor, a gruesome testament to the betrayal that had taken place. After the murder, Marigold attempted to cover her tracks. She staged the scene to make it look like a robbery gone wrong. She scattered items around the house, broke a few objects, and even inflicted a small wound on herself to sell the story. But deep down, she knew it wouldn't be enough. When the police arrived on the scene, they were immediately suspicious. Marigold's story didn't add up. The way she described the robbery didn't match the evidence they found at the scene. The detectives noticed small details, things that just didn't fit. There were no signs of forced entry, and the items Marigold claimed had been stolen were still in the house. As the investigation progressed, the police began to dig deeper into Marigold's life. It didn't take long for them to uncover her affair with Caspian Whitaker. Once they had this information, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The detectives suspected that Marigold and Caspian had conspired to kill Oren, but they needed more evidence to prove it. As the investigation closed in on her, Marigold became increasingly paranoid. She realized that her children, who had been asleep during the murder, could potentially become witnesses. In her twisted mind, she believed that the only way to protect herself and Caspian was to eliminate anyone who might expose them, even her own children. In a horrifying act of desperation, Marigold took the lives of her two innocent children. It was a crime so heinous, so unthinkable, that even the seasoned detectives working the case were shocked by the brutality of it. With the death of her children, Marigold had crossed a line from which there was no return. Despite their efforts to cover up their crimes, Marigold and Caspian's luck eventually ran out. The police were able to gather enough evidence to arrest them both. They were taken into custody, and during their interrogation, the full extent of their plan was revealed. Marigold, faced with the overwhelming weight of her guilt, eventually broke down and confessed to the murders of Oren and her children. Caspian, too, was implicated in the crime, though he tried to shift most of the blame onto Marigold. In the end, both of them were charged with multiple counts of murder and conspiracy. The trial of Marigold Fairfax and Caspian Whitaker was one of the most high-profile cases Los Angeles had seen in years. The courtroom was packed with journalists, spectators, and grieving family members. The public was horrified by the details of the case, particularly the murder of the children. During the trial, the prosecution laid out a clear and compelling case against Marigold and Caspian. The evidence was overwhelming. Phone records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies all pointed to their guilt. In the end, the jury took little time to deliberate before delivering their verdict, guilty on all counts. Both Marigold and Caspian were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice had been served, but for the families of the victims, there would never be true closure. The ripple effects of the Walker family tragedy were felt throughout Los Angeles and beyond. Friends, neighbors, and relatives were left grappling with the aftermath of such a senseless crime. The case also sparked widespread discussion about the dangers of unchecked greed and selfishness, and how easily they can destroy even the most stable of lives. For many, the most tragic aspect of the story was the betrayal of trust within the family. Oren had spent his life working to provide for his family, only to be murdered by the very people he had loved and cared for. It was a stark reminder that evil can sometimes come from the most unexpected places. The murders of Oren Walker and his children remain one of the most chilling cases in the history of Los Angeles. It was a tale of greed, betrayal, and unimaginable loss. Marigold Fairfax, once a loving wife and mother, had been consumed by her own desires, leading her to commit the ultimate betrayal. In the end, her actions destroyed not only her family, but her own life as well. This case serves as a grim reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and moral decay. Marigold and Caspian's selfishness led them down a dark path, one from which there was no return. The memory of Oren and his children, however, lives on, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of betrayal.